doing? I'm going to talk about Reform UK first of all. Reform, a sort of little love triangle. Reform UK, Elon Musk, and Rupert Low. And there's a few spicy little elements to this. And there's a few questions I've noticed in the chat. Bring those up later on because this won't take the whole time. But I just want to start off with this. And in fact, Mark's just said at the beginning, we'll use this because this will segue in. Saying that he missed the stream on Wednesday, was stuck in Birmingham, which is a little bit early for the Reform UK rally. So for those who don't know what's happened, so Rupert Low, of course, is no longer in Reform UK. And we had the incident in January where Elon Musk tweeted out that Nigel Farage doesn't have what it takes to lead. Someone should replace him. In amongst all this, and this was because, remember, Nigel Farage was openly dissociating himself and his party from Tommy Robinson. Now, from Elon Musk's point of view, he's only interested in far-right, what would you call it, really? I mean, I'm not quite anarchist, although anarchy is his aim, particularly, well, in every country, including his own. But he's interested in people who will just basically destroy society, essentially. And, I often think, for example, when sometimes we give MPs, like MPs deserve a hard time, don't get me wrong. But sometimes I think we give them an excessively hard time because what we often forget is, there's a particular thing, like lots of people in the country have a particular thing they think is really important. And it's like, well, the MPs aren't doing anything about it. What are they doing? And quite a lot of the time, what MPs are doing is putting out fires created by agitators like this, like the likes of Elon Musk and Reform UK. Because what they do is they create a massive issue that lots of people go, oh, that's a serious issue. We should do something about this. It's like, no, the serious issue is the fact that you can't afford food or you can't afford housing. Or you can't, if you can afford the basics, that's all you can afford. You can't afford to go on holiday or something. That's the focus. But they create all these other things. So MPs are constantly putting out fires. And Rupert Low is about to start another fire. So you will recall again with so Elon Musk, when he was going off Nigel Farage, people said, oh, what about Rupert Low as a future leader? And he's going, yeah, maybe. So what's nihilist you've suggested there, David? Yeah, maybe. But what Rupert Low's doing, in January they're going about the grooming gang. We need another inquiry. And I was trying to explain. We had an inquiry. We had a national inquiry. And also we've had multiple regional inquiries focused on the particular hotspots. And you know what? They're still going on. So we actually do have inquiries. We have inquiries on we've had an inquiry on a national level. We've already we've had some completed and some ongoing regional inquiries that are focusing on their particular local issues. And we've got a load of recommendations from the report. The big national report was carried out under the Conservatives, but Labour have said that they're going to implement all the recommendations. So if you have another inquiry now, you can't implement those recommendations because if you try and do them at the same time, and this is the point I was trying to make. So let's say you have another national inquiry, even though we've just had one, and you're doing it at the same time as you're implementing all the recommendations. Well, the evidence you collect in the next few months, like an inquiry takes a good 2 or 3 years, yeah? So the evidence you're gathering in the first few months is out of date a year later because you're implementing the recommendations, and that also takes a bit of time. So I'll tell you what it's like. So and this is why it's really insidious, because they're trying to say, oh, why wouldn't they have, it's really serious, isn't it? Of course it's serious, it's abuse of children. Or even if it's abuse of young women, it makes no difference. But so why wouldn't we have an inquiry? Because we already had one. And having another inquiry, because this is what governments do when they want to stop implementing recommendations. We've seen it quite a lot during the Conservatives' time. You have an inquiry and some recommendation. Oh, we need to do a thing. Oh, let's have an inquiry. Then you have an inquiry, recommendations come through, and the government goes, I'm not really sure about these recommendations. We better have another inquiry. They've done that. This is the same thing. So what Rupert Low is basically saying here, and what Reform UK were saying in January is, right, so we've got this, abuse of young girls and young women, and we've got some recommendations that should help protect them. Shall we implement the recommendations and then review them, or should we carry on watching them being abused for our entertainment for a couple of years? And Rupert Low has gone, no, we should carry on watching them being abused for our entertainment, all right, or for his political purposes. So it's hideously insidious. But anyway, they're saying inquiries push the can down the road. Yeah, if you don't know what to do about a problem, or you don't know what the problem is, you do need an inquiry. So inquiries are necessary where either you don't understand the problem or you don't know what the solution is. Then you have an inquiry. But we've had that inquiry, and we've now identified the problems. We've identified some solutions. Now, when we've implemented the solutions, maybe they're not enough. Maybe we need another one in the future, but not now. So Rupert Low has now said he's setting up this inquiry. Now, obviously, he can't. He can't set up an inquiry because he has no legal power to do so. He couldn't possibly compel people to give evidence in the way that a national inquiry that's judge-led can. He's basically setting up a kangaroo court and getting people to crowdfund it in order to, again, raise his political profile. And do you know what it is? You know how these people, the Rupert Lows and the Tommy Robinson stuff, and they all go on about Sharia courts. Oh, and Elon Musk does the same thing. Oh, these Sharia courts in Britain have been taken over by the Islamists, you see. And it's like, mate, a Sharia court is like a golf club committee. Has no legal power. It is literally a committee of people that just operate themselves. No one is bound by their rulings unless they want to be. It's exactly this. It's got the same legal power as a golf club committee, right? If you don't want to be a member of the club, don't have to be. What Rupert Low is doing here is like the same thing, only he expects everyone in the country to be bound by it. He expects everyone in the country to take his kangaroo court seriously, whereas a Sharia court, no one has to take it seriously unless they want to, because it has no power in law, just like this doesn't. Absolutely insidious. But what was interesting to me, because that's my little rant on the old on the way that they're actually protecting abusers, not actually showing concern for them. Remember, people like Elon Musk and Rupert Low are not themselves abusers, as far as I know. However, they're very pally with people are. I mean, they're very close friends with they champion at the very least the likes of Andrew Tate, don't they? Who is not only, and it's not like even Tommy Robinson, a lot of people close to Tommy Robinson coincidentally have convictions for abusing children like this. But, Andrew Tate boasts about it, and they champion him, right? So they're not interested in protecting abuse victims. They're interested in protecting the abusers. And endless inquiries is a great way to protect abusers, because an inquiry like this is ultimately observing abuse. An inquiry is for the purposes of observing abuse. Now, if it's a genuine inquiry, it's with the purpose of finding out what to do about it. We already know what to do about it, and we're doing it. But part of this, and I'm not going to link the tweet. You could find it yourself if you wanted to. I'm not linking anything Rupert Low is putting out on this because it is disingenuous. But part of this massive, massive long tweet is a pop at Reform UK. Now, I'll read this bit out. So he says, finally, he said, by the way, he starts this paragraph finally. It's only halfway through the bloody thing. So his finally still took a bloody long time. But anyway, I would like to apologise. Promises were made by my former party about holding an inquiry, and those promises were not kept. I tried to push behind the scenes, but evidently I did not go far enough, and for that I am sorry. You see, the passive aggression is strong in this one. I do not believe that making such bold claims which gave so many such hope and then failing to deliver is an honest way of conducting politics, particularly on an issue of this magnitude. And it goes on and on and on. So essentially, it's a tweet that's attacking his own party for not being serious about the grooming gangs thing. And Elon Musk is retweeting it. Now, remember, there is supposedly an idea of maybe another far-right party emerging, which Rupert Low is interested in. Now, I've said before The problem that this party will have is it's got no personality. Rupert Low's got no personality, right? Ben Habib, I mean, he's probably got more charisma, but it's still not quite enough, or indeed anywhere near enough. They don't have, and like Nigel Farage is quite an unusual character. If Reform UK, even with all the backing it's had and the contacts with the mainstream media, if it didn't have Nigel Farage, they wouldn't have got where they were at all. You know, the UKIP would never have got where it was without Nigel Farage. Neither would the Brexit Party, neither would Reform UK. They would be, you know, they might exist on a BNP level, but maybe legal. So I'm now looking at this and thinking, is this Rupert Low thinking that he might be able to build up a new party around himself? And this is how he, and maybe he thinks his only problem is he doesn't have a public profile, which he doesn't, right? He doesn't. But that is, again, because he doesn't have the personality. Even Lee Anderson has a public profile, right? I'm not sure we could really describe him as charismatic, but he has a forceful personality, which means whether you love him or hate him, people know who he is. That's not really the same with Rupert Low. He's far too mild. So I'm wondering if they're going to use this as a way of raising his profile, right? Raising his profile, drawing a distinction with Reform UK, saying, you know, a bit like, you know, when you had the sort of, it's like, this will be like the real Reform Party type thing. That's probably what they'll call themselves, the real Reform Party. And if he can use it to raise his profile and look like he could be a challenge to Reform UK, maybe get Elon Musk to support him. First of all on Twitter. First of all, plug him on Twitter like he did with the AFD. Then maybe they'll try and get him to cough up some Reddies. Although hopefully by then, Labour will have brought in these new laws that would stop it. Anyway, let's catch up with some comments. How bad is it as a party when the most charismatic person you can come up with is grifting Green Frog? I mean, ultimately, this is populism for you, though. It relies on someone with charisma. Like MAGA couldn't have got anywhere without Trump. I mean, I know it's distressing to really consider Trump to be charismatic, but, you know, he worked on it. It's like Boris Johnson. Trump actively worked on building up a public profile over a great many years. A lot of years. All of that stuff, making sure he was in Home Alone 2. He had to have that scene in Home Alone 2 to use his hotel. And The Apprentice and all of that was with an aim of building up his public profile. You know, so he was lucky. He took a long run up at politics. It's the same with Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson actually hired like image consultants to create this sort of image of Boris. Remember, he's Alex Bethel Johnson. You know, Boris Johnson, the character, was created by people he specifically hired. And he did the same thing as well. He got himself on the telly. Have I got news for you? Have I got news for you? Get a lot of stick because, of course, they introduced him to the country. But I don't think we can really blame them. But, you know, that's what he did. He did a lot of television, raised his profile. So they took a good long run up at it. I don't know what Nigel Farage's story of. Maybe he was always, because he was so political from a very young age, maybe he was gearing up for it naturally over time. I don't know. Viv, they're saying about in terms of associations, Trump, for instance, Musk doesn't seem to worry about Trump and Epstein. No, they never worry about, but that's the nature of tribal politics. If you're in a tribe, you always defend the people in it, you know, and if someone tries to point at it, oh, you just engaged in whataboutery. So, yeah, I mean, that's the nature of tribal politics. So that works for them. They completely ignore. I mean, it should be absolutely impossible for Donald Trump to win over Christian conservatives. I mean, they're fake Christians, but, you know, Christian conservatives. Should be impossible. Like, there is not a single one of the 10 commandments that he even pretends to keep. In fact, they're actually quite blasphemous, these people. I mean, they basically regarding Trump as God. They're literally deifying him. You know, I mean, never talk about worshipping graven images, idols, or whatever you want to call it. We're angry pagan now, still getting people telling me no uncertain terms that Reform UK is going to win the next general election. Well, no. I mean, the thing is, I mean, you look at the situation now in the polling. The polling is obviously absolutely terrible for Labour. and brilliant for Reform UK. And yet, this is Labour at their least popular. Their absolute least popular. I'm not, I mean, okay, maybe their communication will get better. Maybe it won't. You don't even have to factor that in. The fact of the matter is, what are people disappointed with Labour in? Because all they hear on the news is the bad news, like the cuts and stuff like that, which they still shouldn't have done. They're not helping themselves. But that's all they're hearing. They're not hearing, like, I did a little short today. In the mainstream media, it's all, oh, the economy's getting worse. The economy's getting worse. But if you read the economic news, and don't worry, they've got some criticisms for what Reeves is doing. But nonetheless, the actual economic news is, no, the economy is actually getting better. And I'm not surprised as well, because I say, I can sort of judge a certain sector, like particularly the retail sector, by the ad rate. So the ad rate crashed at the end of last year. And lo and behold, we had terrible economic figures. It wasn't good in January, not good economic figures. It was not terrible in February. We've got slightly better economic figures. And I'll tell you something, it's gone up quite a bit in March. So I reckon when in a month's time, 1 month's time, when we get to the March retail figures, they're going to be good. I think they're going to be decent. Plus, we've got the usual thing. We've got interest rates cuts coming. So the economy is actually, as long as we can avoid Trump's trade war, the economy is actually looking decent. I mean, it's not going to obviously go taking off like a rocket, but it will be much better. And then people start to know, like at the moment, the NHS is noticeably better, but not everyone needs it at any one time. So they need to plug that more. They're going to do that we're going to see some campaigning over the next few weeks. Labour are going to put their campaign machine into gear for the first time since they've been in government. So we're going to see how effective that is in government, but they are going to plug the NHS a lot. But in a year's time, there'll be more stuff to plug. And then in another year, there'll be more stuff to plug. If Reform UK cannot even, like they've got this year to overtake Labour. That's it. They've got this year to do it. You might see the odd one where it's, oh no, in this poll, they're already above them. But it's like, yeah, but I mean, some polls are crap. But even amongst the ones that want within the margin for error, the Tories, Labour and Reform UK are all on exactly the same. The Lib Dems are not necessarily that far behind. So you've almost got a four-way tie. I mean, Lib Dems have still got some way to go. But maybe because they'll get a bit more attention as the local elections come up, they will get some more love in the polls. Although I don't necessarily like where it'll come from. Good, they're saying, here's an idea for you. Create a live Google Doc with Labour's achievements and failures with sources for those who can't closely follow politics enough to debunk the mainstream media for posterity. I suppose I could. But I'd really rather just, I mean, the thing is, I'd really rather just talk. I mean, the other thing I was noticing is, I sometimes get comments. Like I had a comment today on a video from yesterday that had nothing to do with Labour. Not every one of my videos is to do with Labour. And they were going on about, oh, how come you haven't complained about these benefit cuts then? And I said, or what we should do differently. And I said, right, I've got 3 videos on the benefits cuts, but if you include what we should have done instead, I've got 4 videos out on that. In actual fact, I cannot think of anything that Labour have done that I've disapproved of that I haven't covered in a video. But there are several things they've done that I do approve of that I haven't. Like, for example, I haven't done a video on the NHS improvements. I've referenced it a couple of times. I haven't actually done a video on it, which seems weird. So, but that's what I'd rather, but the important thing is people have to notice it themselves. So in terms of Labour's improvements, if their comms is going to be crap, I mean, I can only get through to so many people. I will try. But people need to realise it for themselves. People need to actually feel it better. So they need to be able to go, oh, it is actually now easier to get a GP appointment. Oh, it is, oh, I'm not waiting as long for these elective surgeries, although only so many people have elective surgery after elective surgery. So most people probably won't notice that. But what we need is for people to go, oh, yeah, I do feel better off now. Oh, yes, it's the various things that are probably, it is now easy to get homing. It is now, or housing, sorry, use the right word. We're not pigeons. But anyway. Right, where were we? My MP posted something on Facebook about Farage wanting an insurance-based system to replace the NHS. Almost every reply was calling my MP a lie. this is a problem. But I mean, what he should have done. The problem is with these MPs, they get the messages from the whips, and remember, there's no directive of communications, and the last one, wasn't really up to it, and they don't know how to communicate to the public, which is a bit of a problem. What they need to do is post videos of him saying it. Post videos of him saying it. That's what you need to do. Because, people won't believe it. So you post your sources, don't you? Here's him saying it. But it shows you how powerful it is. The fact that instantly, what you've just said there, that instantly people going, no, you're not telling the truth. It doesn't. That shows that if you can show people that Nigel Farage does want an insurance basis, which he does, he's on video as saying so. And the best one to go for is that Led by Donkeys video. Then it proves that you can actually split those voters off Nigel Farage. So that's what I would take it out as a positive. If I were that MP, I'd be going, oh, right, so you don't believe me. Right, here's the proof. That's what that MP should have done. They should have gone, because those people haven't gone, oh, it doesn't matter, we're in favour of it too. Yeah, totally. They've gone, so you don't believe it. Right, here's the proof. That's the way to do it. Unfortunately, and it blows my mind, most MPs do not know how to communicate with the public. What they need to do is think to themselves, I want to get this message out. How do I present it? And then when you get that feedback, you should go, right. Well, here you go then. Ivan there says, there are definitely NHS improvements, not the case for mental health. I mean, really, there is almost no mental health provision in the NHS. And I say this because, yes, technically the NHS will employ like psychiatrists and so on and mental health teams. I have known, as I'm sure everyone here has, I have known a lot of people in my life that have had serious mental health needs, like medical needs. I have never known a single person get treatment on the NHS. Not one. There's been a couple of people who've gone private. I haven't known a single one who's got it on the NHS. The only thing you get on the NHS is drugs, which sometimes make the problem worse. They certainly don't treat it. They may manage it, but in most of the people I've known, they've just made it worse. So yeah, I've known lots of people that have had mental health issues, mental health disorders of some kind or other, whether short-term but severe or longer term and debilitating still. Not a single person do I know, and they've tried. It's not like they've gone, oh, well, they won't do anything, so I won't bother. They've tried, but not a single person's actually had it. But there we go. Sarah there saying, sorry, Phil, the last fortnight has broken me, made my mental health crash and caused me to resort to self-harming. It's how I cope from high stress. Well, for goodness, please try and get in touch at least with a local group. Because although I say I have never known anyone that's been able to get mental health help on the NHS, I mean, do try, but there are usually local groups. Because unfortunately, that's the situation we're in. We're in a situation where people have to cover for... It's David Cameron's big society idea. We have to cover with people in the community actually providing the services that the state is not. Please try and find there will be a local group. Use that as your new tagline, Phil. We're not pigeons. Well, unfortunately, we often behave like pigeons, don't we? And Punit is there making a point. Biggest issue right now for the NHS management is the missing meds, which is resolved by reversing Brexit. So we do, yes, we have a lot of medicine shortages. You always have some at any one time, but we have a lot more than we used to. And for some of them, it's like ones that are commonly needed. And yeah, I mean, it's a supply chain issue. The EU, because the thing is as well, again, it comes back. We had this with the tomatoes, didn't we? But that's just tomatoes, right? When it comes to meds, it's more serious. It's the same thing though. We are the customer of last resort. So first of all, we naturally have supply chain issues with drugs just because of the time it now takes to get them into the country. And remember, 80%, before, this was before Brexit. I don't know what the situation is now. I can't imagine it's any better. But before Brexit, 80% of all the drugs the NHS used had at least part of their process of manufacture in the EU. So at least some part of their manufacture was in the EU. So straight away, you raise massive trade barriers, you're going to create a problem. But we have an extra problem at the moment in the EU in general also has shortages from time to time. EU countries have shortages. And when that happens, they supply their own market first. So any drugs that we're importing from the EU, if they're drugs where they don't have an abundance themselves, we're not getting it. So we're having extra problems at the moment because there are some drugs where they're having difficulties, like important ones having difficulties in the EU as well. And it is a problem that we do not, something like that, you do not solve without being inside the single market at least. That doesn't go away until you're inside. You know, whatever we can do to say reduce checks at the border, that's helpful. That cuts out a lot of those trade barriers. We'd still need the paperwork. But as long as we're outside the single market, whenever there's a shortage of anything in the EU, we don't get it because they will, it doesn't matter about the trade barriers, they will supply their own market first because they're all part of the same club. That's what you would do. Just like you would look after your family ahead of like a stranger, even if you would normally help the stranger out. So they say, I lost my NHS mental health psychiatrist after she took early retirement 3 weeks ago. CPN took on a new role due to cuts not being replaced. Live spoke to mine. Yeah, please get in touch with the local group at the very least. I mean, you know, it's remarkable that you actually had some help because, like I said, everyone I've known, and I've known some people with very, very serious issue, were never able to get any help on the NHS at all. How should Greenlanders protect their land? I think should lay down on the runways. It is obviously very difficult. I mean, America has an air base, like a military base there. And the way a military base works is very much like an embassy. It's sort of theirs. So there's nothing you can do really to, unless you want to tell America to piss off with its sorry, I keep saying air base, military base, which they don't. I mean, Greenland, like, they like the idea of America there on their side. So, of course, when they're on your side, of course, you're going to let them have a military base there because they've got a really good military. So there's not a lot to be done, but it is quite worrying. I'm going to be talking again to Professor Wolf, the security expert, in a week or not next week, but the week after, I think, where I'm going to try and find out the expert views on a lot of this stuff. Because what I'd quite like to know, what I'd like to be told, is that for all Trump's bluster, he will not actually annex Greenland. But I don't know that because I look at the situation and think, I'd like to think the American military would go, no, we're not. I have no confidence if he wants to annex the Panama Canal that I am absolutely certain that the American military would obey an order to invade Panama or Gaza. But Greenland's a NATO ally, right? So that should surely be a bit. But I'm not so sure because the Pentagon released a very political statement last week. Very political. Not the sort of statement it used to produce when he was in power the first time. There was a real separation between the military chiefs and Trump the first time. He's still their commander-in-chief, of course. But there was a real emphasis during his first term that their first priority was to the Constitution, not the president. This time around, he's replaced some people, and that is no longer the case. So I am a bit worried about Greenland. So I want to be reassured, if anything. Prior to that, saying he was an administrative manager in GP surgery. The 5 big NHS issues, my opinion, missing meds, toxic work culture, the system not designed for today's medical challenges, and to be continued in a minute. So in terms of the missing meds, we are going to struggle while we're out of the single market, and there's really not a lot to be done about that. If the shortages in the single market, we're not getting them because they will supply their own first. Toxic work culture, depends what it's down to. If it's down to the fact that everyone's stressed because they're overstretched, then that might lead into the next one, which is the system is not designed for today's medical challenges. At least Wes Streeting goes on about that a lot. So assuming he's got the right solutions, hopefully there should be improvements there at least, and that may also improve the work culture. See if we can find the rest of it. Hold on. Because it's another it's a minute before you're allowed to type again, you see. I might have to wait for that one. You say there surely could be a bespoke medicines agreement with the EU. Yes, but they will always supply their own first. You will never get the EU to agree to be considered one of their own without being one of their own. Like, you know, if you're in the single market, you will be supplied first. It's that simple. That's always going to be the case, even if they have enough stock, because it's more hassle because they've got to fill in the paperwork. So it's not even like a deliberate sort of camaraderie. I was going to say cronyism then, but that's a bit unfair because it's perfectly standard. It's, you know, you have a... it's just natural. If you've got a load of consignments of things to send off around Europe, and most of them just need a dispatch note, and one of them needs a big stack of paperwork, you leave the one that's a big stack of paperwork to last. But it is also the case that the EU Commission will make sure that where there are shortages, their own members are served first. And no agreement will change that. You are not going to get them to agree to make us, because that would be cherry picking. That would be asking to be made a favoured nation without an agreement, a proper. No, we need to be in the single market. What did Denmark get in exchange for giving up Greenland, Texas, Florida, Apple, Microsoft? Well, no, I mean, it's not really Denmark's. It is sort of technically. It's one of those situations where Greenland, Iceland's got nothing to do with it. Let's hope Trump doesn't want Iceland as well. Greenland is sort of autonomous. It technically is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, but it may well become independent in the future. I mean, you know, Putin actually, I might do a video on this tomorrow. Putin actually undermined Trump because Trump was trying to say, the reason Trump wants Greenland, by the way, is, if just in case it's not clear, is for its mineral resources. It's a big old area of land. There's a lot of stuff untapped underneath the surface, right? It's huge, which means lots of mineral wealth. So Trump wants that. He will dig it up like Alaska if he gets it. But he claims it's so that it's because of the threat of Russia and China. Now, yeah, okay, Russia may pose a threat to the North Atlantic round there. But first of all, owning Greenland doesn't help because Greenland's quite happy for America to operate its military from Greenland. But also, Putin undermined that argument by approving of the move. So Putin's openly said he approves of the idea of America taking over Greenland because as far as he's concerned, the world should be carved up between America, Russia and China. And of course, Putin's happy with that because he thinks he's pally with America and China. Well, he's got America wrapped around his little finger. And although China is the senior partner in that relationship these days, he's still sort of got Xi largely on side. And of course, in terms of China, it's like, well, how the hell do they think China gets? I mean, there's no Chinese ships around there. When was the last time anyone saw a Chinese ship around there? Did I miss your other 1.8? Hang on. Never mind. So there's one thing which does annoy me with the NHS is people thinking waiting lists are the problem. They aren't. They're the symptoms of the actual issues with the NHS. Yeah, I absolutely agreed. But that can also mean, and I do accept the point that there are different waiting lists. And if a waiting list goes down, you might actually be pushing some of the problems somewhere else. But what I would say is, if a longer waiting list is a symptom of the issues with the NHS, then surely a shorter waiting list, by and large, is a manifestation of improvements. Ivan, they're saying, completely agree about the emails from ministers to Labour Party members. They're dreadful at the moment. Labour can't communicate properly with its members, let alone the wider public. It is. They need someone who can teach them how to speak. And I do get it. You know, you're from various backgrounds, even though, I mean, Labour are not exactly Etonians, are they? I mean, the Labour cabinet is now, I'm not happy about the fact Louise Haigh went, but now that Louise Haigh is not in there, it's 100% state educated. 100% state educated cabinet. First time ever. Absolutely first time. So there's no arguing that the way it all came from. I mean, okay, some could still come from like an upper middle class background, but they didn't go to private school, so they aren't born with a silver spoon in the mouth or anything. So, you know, they even if they were from a slightly posh family themselves, they still went to school with ordinary people because they went to the same school. So, you know, but I get how when you go through life and you end up in some of these ministers are really high flying. They've had very successful careers. So you end up mingling with people who probably were privately educated, and, you know, so you then sort of forget what it's like to be an ordinary person. So you just need, and that's fine, but you just need to sort of get an advisor who can translate for you. You know, I mean, it shouldn't be that hard. Just get someone who knows how to talk. But there you go. Warren Peggy then say, I know the benefit cuts are bad, and they really are. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm glad to see the massive investments going into public infrastructure, green energy, environmental restoration. These things are genuinely good. They are. And it's just a shame that they had to spoil it with some cuts that they're not even really justifying, other than we need to save the money, when they had other options. It's deeply distressing. I didn't expect to be happy with everything they would do. And I actually knew they would do some things that would really irritate me. But I didn't think it'd be like this soon and this bad. But anyway, it is what it is. Viv, they're saying, as long as Streeting isn't going further down the privatisation route. No, the privatisation, as far as can be told, is purely about getting those waiting lists down, those historic waiting lists down. Because, you know, if you to say, let's build up our capacity, you're basically saying, so let's leave millions of people on the waiting list while we do that. So and it's still not ideal. I mean, I did a video with someone from We Own It last year, you may remember. And one really good point he made is, you know, if you end up going to a private hospital for some elective surgery, whatever, it's not ideal because they don't have emergency room. They don't have ICUs there. So if the surgery goes well, great, fine, fantastic. You know, there's another one off the list. But if something goes wrong, there's no ICU there. So you're actually more likely to die as a result of surgery at a private hospital than an NHS hospital. Because there's no emergency, because they'll have to call 999 if they have a problem on the operating table. So it's not ideal. But yeah, you know, what we have seen so far is actually nationalisation of the NHS. Like, I cannot emphasise it. I know when a lot of people think about nationalisation, they mean getting rid of private contracts. And that is obviously part of it. But the move on NHS England is actually a big... Because what nationalisation literally means, it's not... The money is important, but what it at its core means is that the state manages it. A nationalised service is one that the state manages. So NHS England, the NHS wasn't being managed by the Health Secretary in the last decade. They could sort of interfere, but they weren't doing the day-to-day running of it. The Department for Health and Social Care was not running the NHS in England. NHS England were, which was a quango. So getting rid of that is actually a nationalisation move. Obviously, we also need to make sure it runs more efficiently by having less profit in the system. As I say, the first thing I would do is get rid of the cleaning agencies and hire... Because you always need a cleaner. And I cannot understand for the life of me who thought it was a good idea to get private cleaners in a hospital. They don't even clean the hospital. My mum was a nurse. So when I was really young, sometimes I would be taken along, and she had a shift, right, in the evening. So I would go along and I'd just be in like the kiddies area playing with the toys. They were spotless. Hospitals then were spotless. This would have been the early 80s. Absolutely spotless. Whereas now they're actually filthy. You know, when I go into a hospital now, you can see, and I'm not, so my wife's always saying this about me, I don't see the dirt, because she'll like look around the place. Oh, it's filthy, we need to get cleaning. And when she says we, she means her. I'm not a clean, but so when I notice dirt, it's dirty, and I notice dirt in hospitals. I think that's why the lighting's so low these days, so you can't see it, but I can see it. And I don't understand how it makes any sense. Like, you contract something out for a service you need every now and then, like get a new IT system, so you get someone in to install it, right? But or even like an engineer for a machine that only needs maintenance once a year and hardly ever breaks down. Okay, you might contract that out, yeah. But cleaners you need every day. Why wouldn't you employ your own cleaners? Because one of two things is happening if you get a cleaning agency to deal with your cleaning. Either one, you're paying more money for it because they need to make a profit, or two, you're getting a crapper service. I suspect both. Anyway, I'm going on. Pronounced they're saying, in a sense, shortlists are, but the question remains, are you getting those shortlists with quick fixes which will falter when removed, or by tackling the inner workings? Well, exactly, and that I can't possibly say. All I can say is that various metrics for the NHS improved month on month for the last 5 months over winter, which shouldn't have been, which is mad. And they should be plugging that more. What I would say, though, I am quite sure the improvements will keep going. I'm not saying you will get improvements every single month compared to the month before. I mean, surely there will become a point where it gets to next winter and it will sort of go back a bit before going forward, as long as it's still better than it was the same point. Because that's really the key. You don't compare these metrics with how it was the previous month. You compare it with the same point the previous year, at which point Labour will look really good right now. But that's, I think, if you compare the performance of the NHS in any government month from now on for the next few years, I think I can be confident in saying it will be better than the same point the previous year, which is what matters. Emma there saying, yes, they have to address social care. The NHS will always struggle until it's sorted out. Absolutely. I remember when Theresa May basically said to the NHS, look, I'm going to give you some more money, right? Oh, great, fancy. But you have to take over this social care workload for less money than we were spending for the actual social care to deal with it. So yeah, they do, because a lot of people that end up going to A&E shouldn't be going to A&E for a start. Sometimes I've gone to A&E when I shouldn't have gone to A&E. There's nowhere else. That's why, you know, I mean, we are doing more of this as well, more sort of community, like sort of walking centres and things like that. That'd be really useful. What makes you more exasperated, hearing the term red Tories or neoliberal? I get exasperated when people use the word neoliberal because I'm such a pedant. The red Tories thing is not exasperating because you just get used to it after a while. You get desensitised to it. It's people who are not serious. If I was going to describe anyone as red Tories, it would be the people who literally insisted that Labour vote for the biggest Tory policy of my lifetime. That was leaving the EU, triggering Article 50. That's what I would say. If you want to look at a red Tory, look at someone who did what the Tories wanted. Something that not only destroyed consumer and worker rights, but also the standard of living disproportionately for poorer people. You know, I'll keep coming back to it. If we were still in the EU, maybe Labour wouldn't have won the election by quite so much, because Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt would have had more money to spend being in the EU still. But Rachel Reeves would have had an extra 40 billion quid. We wouldn't have had these cuts then, I'll tell you that much. Think that mania for contracting out support services like cleaning, security, etc. dates back to Maggie and Sir Derek Rayner. when whom she brought in to advise on savings that weren't. I'd be very. I don't see how you can even hypothetically, you cannot make savings from cleaners because you need them every day. It's not a particularly skilled job. None of the arguments for private contracts contracting out work for cleaning. There's various other things where I don't think they work, but for cleaning, it's so like you need training to be a cleaner, but it's not difficult. You can train people how to clean. They don't. It's not a great wage as a cleaner. Let's be honest. So it's not hard to find cleaners. It's not hard to train them. There's absolutely no benefit, not even a hypothetical benefit, with contracting the service out. So no, the cleaning one for me was just a raid on the public purse, or a way of rewarding a donor. I'll donate £5,000 to your election campaign. You give me this contract for cleaning at the hospital. Should I say efficiency? That wasn't. Yeah, I mean, efficiency is doing the same job for less, for fewer resources, whatever those resources are. If they're not doing the same job, and I strongly suspect it's costing more. Jeffrey, they're saying, was born in Zambia. Long story. Last I heard, spends more on debt repayment than their NHS, even back in '78. Mam said Zambian hospitals were cleaner. I mean, it's like it. What was the point of Florence Nightingale? Like, the one thing she taught people was clean, be clean. Like, stop letting germs get into wounds. Brad, I say, I'm currently receiving CBT on the NHS for possible OCD. However, I was on the waiting list for nearly a year. Yeah. I mean, the one I will say is like, be thankful, Brad. Like, as my wife says, be thankful you have a penis. I may be assuming certain things there, but like both my stepdaughters have very obvious medical problems. Can we get to the bottom of it? Can we? Bollocks. Because first of all, they get discouraged by it all. They need to be on them all the time. What happens is that the cycle's been going on for years, literal years. What happens is, a flare-up of something happens, go to the doctor. Oh, we'll put you in for this test. They go for the test. Sometimes the doctor tells them to go away. We're not doing that test on you. It's been ordered. The GP said they need this test. The doctor at the hospital's gone, piss off. Right? So then nothing happens. Sometimes they do the test and they don't, it's not the thing you want, right? Or it's not the thing. So what they were looking for wasn't there. It's a negative test, right? So then you would think, oh, we didn't find it. Well, let's think what else it could be and do a test for that. No, they just discharge it. Oh, we didn't find it, so therefore there's nothing wrong with you, which is mad. That's not how medical practice is supposed to work. That's ridiculous. But that is their and it's because, I'll bet you it's because they're young women. So they're probably just thinking, oh, they just probably got women's problems. Even the women doctors probably just think they got like women's problems. Go away. It's like, no wonder it takes so long to get things like, endometriosis, diagnosed, or anything that's something that affects women, not so much men. And if it's something that doesn't affect men at all, you've got no chance, have you? But anyway. Worst ever Tory thing for me is when Section 28 was introduced. I mean, I'm one of those who probably hasn't been particularly negatively impacted by the Tories. I suppose, other than the fact that when I went into teaching, the first half of my career, Labour in power, so not only did the wages go up considerably, but so too did resourcing. So, we had loads of resourcing. It was brilliant. As soon as the Tories came in, straight away, tap turned off for everything. So wages started going down in real terms, and sometimes by the rate of inflation, because sometimes the pay was frozen completely. And also you couldn't get training, you couldn't get new equipment, just everything just stopped. All the money stopped. But that, in terms of directly attacking me personally, I'm a white male. I sort of got without any particular issue, so I sort of got away with it. Parson there saying, I was in the civil service till the mid-90s. My section underwent market testing. Civil service is way cheaper than any firm. Well, this is the problem we had. So I taught for like the last part of my career in sixth form colleges. And sixth form colleges are actually a really efficient way of delivering the sort of education they deliver. Because you've got... So I've taught A-levels, for example, in a sixth form college, but I've also taught them in a school. So when I taught A-level physics in a school, it would be, that would be my like chill out time effectively, because I would be teaching year 7s, years 8s, years 9, year 10, year 11, and then I'd get my upper and lower sixth maybe, and it's like, I've got students who want to learn, isn't this nice? Whereas in a sixth form college, if you do an A-level, you're probably being taught by someone who just teaches that A-level. So an A-level physics teacher may do a couple of other things as well, but a lot of them just teach A-level physics, so they become very specialised in teaching that course, or whatever course it is. I taught for most of my time there applied science, so you become specialist at teaching that. And so sixth form colleges are incredibly efficient, and yet governments don't really like them. Mad. Labour's biggest legacy problem that affects me personally is dentistry. Oh yeah, I've had a bit. I have a dentist now. I need to make an appointment actually, and I constantly forget. I'm absolutely terrible with my own personal dentistry, and I've got no excuse for it. But yeah. Jeffrey saying worst ever Tory thing for me is when they got elected. Unfortunately, this will keep happening, which is why electoral reform is so important, because, and this is what I would really just say to Labour every time, you're going to do some things, right? And hopefully a lot of those things will work out well. You won't get everything right. Remember after the last Labour government, there were a lot of improvements. There were some things that barely improved at all, like transport didn't really improve at all. A couple of other things as well. But the things they focused on, they got better. Crime rates were lower. Education standards were higher. More people were engaged in education. The educational maintenance allowance, absolutely superb. I can tell you as someone who taught in colleges both early and late in my career, the presence of EMA meant attendance was not an issue. Later on in my career, attendance major issue in colleges. It's really simple. Chuck them a few quid and you'll get 100% attendance or very close to it, except when they're genuinely ill. So many things that the NHS, can't say further than that. It was the #1 ranked healthcare in the world, judged by, what do you call it now? Like the experience of people who use it, consumer experience or whatever you want to call it. So measured by that, the people in Britain approved of their healthcare system more than anyone else in the world of their own. So this Labour government will do the same. There will be the things it's focusing on will probably work out really well. They're focusing on, at the moment, they're focusing on housing. They're focusing on transport, devolving to local areas. Transport where I am will probably be knackered because it's the metro mayors that are going to be driving it. And we don't have one at the moment. We're getting one in May. And I'm afraid to say, as I said this morning, it's probably going to be Andrea Jenkins for Reform UK. So in Lincolnshire, we're probably knackered. We're not going to see any of these benefits, never mind. But I actually don't even know who the tactical vote is. I actually don't know whether it's Labour or Conservative because it's Lincolnshire, probably Conservative. I don't know. Anyway, it's, I'm trying to be really optimistic about the by-election in Runcorn and the local elections, but I just find it very difficult to be optimistic about the mayoral election. But, they're focusing on transport for most of the country, NHS, housing, energy. Those seem to be the main foci. And I think they'll do really well on it. And then there may be some other things they don't do so well. I've got hopes for the criminal justice system because, they've got a prisons minister who thinks we have too many people in prison. We've also appointed, actually, ironically, a former Conservative minister who thinks the same thing. So we can see which way that's going. So, you know, that'll also help the economy, because when you lock someone up for no good reason, or not a good enough reason, I'm not suggesting we put people in prison for nothing, but for not a good enough reason, then you're hurting the economy, because it costs a lot of money to put someone up in prison and they can't work. So we should only really do it if they're posing a threat to someone, or they won't bloody stop whatever they're doing. But anyway, Brian Pagan, they're saying, I was one of the few at school who genuinely wanted to learn, especially the sciences. Yeah, I mean, I was in the top set and I could still say the same thing. I was in my school, it was so shit. I was in the top set and it was still full of idiots. Absolute arseheads. That's how grim it was. Never mind. Viv, they're saying sixth form colleges and FE college students don't have parents who are likely to complain or even vote. Sometimes makes them the Cinderellas of education. That's possibly a good point. I would still say parents are, you know, parents of school age kids and college age kids are key voting groups though. But I also guess, yeah, you don't tend to get as many parental complaints in a college as you do a school, because it's a more chill environment. You're less likely to piss the kids off, you know, because in a school you can't actually tell the crap students to go and play in traffic. You're probably not supposed to in a college, but it didn't really stop me. They're saying transport didn't improve under Labour, but certainly fell under the Tories. Absolutely. When the Tories left power, there were literally half as many bus routes in England. Or was it England and Wales? I'm pretty sure it's just England. Half as many bus routes. And of course, you know, where you can't get a bus, you can't get to work. So, like, if you're living out in the sticks, or you just live anywhere that's not near the potential workplaces, it means you can't work. So that's an attack on the economy. It's so, you know, allowing public services. It's one thing when you make public services more expensive. That can create an economic hit, because it needs people need more money to be able to afford them. But because, I mean, that's the thing. If Tories want wage suppression, right? If they want, don't let the wages go up too high. Well, try making the standard of living cheaper, because do you know what most people want? Most people are not like these rich arseholes. Most people do not want loads of money. I don't want loads of money. If I was to win the lottery, for me, it wouldn't be like, there's no difference to me between winning a couple of million and winning like 100 million. All it would represent for me is financial stability, you know, financial freedom, to be able to do what I like, just pick my feet up, basically. But, so for an ordinary people, it's the same thing. They just want to be able, they want to do a decent day's work for a decent day's pay, and then they want to enjoy themselves. And for some people, it's not really very much. They want to make sure they've got a full belly. And for some people, they just want a night in front of the telly, or to be able to go out to the pub or the theatre or something. They don't want a lot. So if you want to keep wages down, keep the bloody cost of living down. But some of these things that they do, it's like you're harming the economy. You're making it harder for people to find work. Like, transport is such an essential, because it's very rare for people to live near their workplace these days. So you need to travel. What sordid crime did I commit to receive Jenkins as your local mayor? I moved to Lincolnshire, didn't I? I mean, I had no real choice at the moment, because I moved with my wife here. But I will be honest, I lived in Lincolnshire before I moved here. In fact, ever since I left home, I've lived in some part of Lincolnshire. I first of all went to Grimsby, then Immingham, then Scunthorpe, now Epworth. So I've moved slowly back towards Doncaster, but I think I'm stuck here now because I got married. But there you go. Did I see a question, Em? No, I don't think I did. I better find it quickly because we're running out of time. There it is. Women's problems having periods along with PMS, generally being hormonal or perhaps more emotional than men are thought to be. I really don't know what it is, because I could, you know, it's bad enough if male doctors, because I honestly don't know why they're sending my stepdaughters away. You know, it's bad enough if it's male doctors thinking that. They've had female doctors who've told them to piss off as well. And it's like, for goodness sake. But anyway, and they're saying good buses reduce number of other vehicles on the road, So benefit even drivers of private cars. Yes, they don't think about it that way though. No, but I mean, if you want people, if you want to get people into work, you need to give people as wide a range of choice of work as possible. So they need the transport. If you don't provide the transport, you can't. You're knackering your economy. It's just an essential. There are certain things that are just essential public services, and the state needs to provide them. And if you want the private sector to provide them, you still have to provide them. That's the thing. If you're going to talk about the private sector providing, because that's the Tory mantra, isn't it? The private sector will provide. Well, it needs to provide then. Make it provide. And if the reason why half the bus routes in England had to be chopped over that 14-year period, if the reason because not economically viable, make it economically viable. Because they're necessary. Punay today saying, my old man has moved to Lincolnshire. He voted reform in the general election due to his racism, not letting him vote for Sunak. Yes, he's a Brexiteer. How do you know? Yeah, I mean, Lincolnshire sort of attracts these people. It's like, a couple of years ago when they did that map of Britain and every little sort of area, they did a poll to see if they were still in favour of Brexit or not. And there's only one place in the whole of Britain, that was still net positive on Brexit, and it's Sleaford. I think it was Sleaford. It's one of those shitty places on the east coast in Lincolnshire anyway. And yeah, it's the whole place is. I mean, like Richard Tice is a Lincolnshire MP, Boston and Skegness. It's all very gammony. It really is. It's really desperate. It's unfortunate. Yeah. So I think the problem will be I don't even know the tactical vote is. Maybe I should ask stopthetories.com. I don't even know who the tactical vote would be. But we'll see. But I can retain no optimism for it. David there saying, I grew up in Earlham where virtually everyone worked locally. The place is now just a dormitory town. Well, that's often the problem. Where I grew up, it was a mining village. So a lot of people did work there. Or my dad would work at the British Rail Centre in Doncaster, which is just down the road. You could get a bus to that, no problem. But there you go. John's mentioning, maybe I'm thinking of Spalding. Spalding's a nice town, but it's gammon central. Some are actually really quite thick, yeah. The problem is, I actually got into a little bit of trouble as a teacher once saying this. It was only a bit of fun though. The problem is that Lincolnshire's actually split into multiple. There's like North Lincolnshire, North East Lincolnshire, and Lincolnshire, but it's all Lincolnshire. And it's called Greater Lincolnshire for the purposes of this mayoralty. But Lincolnshire itself is actually quite long. It goes a long way down to like Peterborough. I mean, you probably don't know where that Peterborough is either. But it's a long way down the country. So it covers a hell of a lot of... I can't tell the difference between latitude and longitude. Which am I thinking of? Can't remember. But north-southy. I should have Graham here. And it's... but it's all very gammony from north to south. It's very different, very gammony. And there has been a lot of inbreeding in the past, I have to say. And this is where I got into trouble one time. I lived in this my parting little shop. So I was teaching in a school in Lincolnshire one time, in proper Lincolnshire. Fortunately, it was a good class, so I got away with it. I probably shouldn't have said it. I sometimes used to overstep the mark. And we were talking, because it was Lincolnshire, we were talking about Isaac Newton, because he came from Lincolnshire. He was from a rural Lincolnshire, originally grew up on a farm. And someone said, my family knew Newton. And I said, this is Lincolnshire. Oh, no, so related, that was it. It said, oh, my family's related to Newton. And I said, this is Lincolnshire. Everyone's related to everyone else. Which is probably literally true anyway, because, I mean, everyone sort of around Europe is technically related to everyone else if you go back far enough. But that's not the point I was making. But anyway, so we have this sort of normal for Norfolk situation, but you know what? The same situation applies in Lincolnshire. but it is what it is. And they're really touchy. I noticed that moving from Yorkshire to Lincolnshire, they're really touchy here. You know, it's hardly. It's just down the road, just down the A180, the M180, then the A180. So I moved from Doncaster to Grimsby. It's only like 30 miles away. But in Yorkshire, like, I mean, if someone is touchy every now and then, you just tell them to shut up. But you can be quite blunt in Yorkshire. Whereas, and in the south of England, they're very touchy, I notice. The south of England get really uptight. But in Lincolnshire, they do, which is most unlike the rest of the Midlands. The rest of the Midlands are fairly chill. Like in Birmingham, they're quite chill, and that's quite far down south. Whereas in Lincolnshire, they're really touchy. They don't, you know, they get easily upset. I wonder if that's part of the Brexit link. They're easily upset. But anyway. Ivan there saying, I'm confused. I thought I was a Yorkshireman. Yeah, I'm from Yorkshire. I grew up in Yorkshire. I live now technically slightly outside Yorkshire because Lincolnshire's stuck to Yorkshire. It's just where I live. Final one there. Sarah saying, where are the jobs the only ones who will be happy is the bosses who can use the numbers, looking for work as a way to pay poor wages, worse hours as everyone competes for work. Well, this is it. And also now that Labour, this is what I'm thinking, now that Labour are unleashing a load of civil servants onto the job market, where now we know that they are building some up in some industries, like in the energy industry, they're going to be building some up. But yeah, we need to build more up. Otherwise, exactly, you just, if you don't build up more jobs, you just, I suppose one thing slightly in favour here would be, because the public want immigration to be lower and Labour are going along with that, I guess by restricting, and I know there aren't any specific proposals to restrict immigration more than the Tories did, but if there were, then that would mean it becomes an employees market more. If we actually tone down on immigration, that'd be the only benefit I could think of. But, you know, until you do that, particularly people with disabilities, the thing about, you know, Labour saying we need to get people with disabilities into work is like, yeah, they need employers who, they don't always need a lot of consideration, but there's always something an employer will need to do to help someone into the workplace if they're disabled. And if you're an employer, you don't want the hassle. So you need a job market where the employers are the desperate ones if you want to achieve that. But anyway, there it is. Thanks for a longitude. Thank you. Oh, longitude. Yes, that's probably what I meant then. If I want an easy road to remember. Do you know what, S-Fax? This is probably the first time in my entire life I've had to use the word longitude since I was an astronomer, when I would have known which was which. Even though right ascension and declination would have been more my bread and butter, but I would have known longitude and latitude as well. But that was a long time ago. So yeah, I probably never need it again, but thanks anyway. Yes, Viv saying at the end there, don't forget the clocks go forward. We're going to be on British summertime tomorrow. They're stealing an hour of rest from me. I'm going to wake up tired and grumpy. But thanks very much for coming on, everyone. Have a great evening. And until next time, I'll see you later.